Okay, welcome to a political policies debate. I'm here with, we'll introduce our names soon, but here's the thing in this debate. We're going to introduce the rules shortly, and we'll get off with the debate. But first off, throughout this debate, you can look down in the description below this video, and there will be a link to a SurveyMonkey survey where you can actually vote for the winner of this debate depending on their policy and issues. So if you want to go ahead and start talking about the rules, that would be great.
All right, so basic rules, we're going to have an opening statement of 2 minutes apiece, approximately. If the time is called, of course, we're going to allow each other to finish the thought so long as it's not excessive. There are going to be about 7 or 8 questions, depending on how many we get to, where we're each going to have a 2-minute response with an optional 1-minute rebuttal if we feel it's necessary. And then at the end, we're going to have a 2-minute closing statement where we can air anything else that we feel is necessary. And of course, there's going to be a little bit of an honor code here. It's kind of self-moderated, just we were hard pressed for time, and that's life sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. Starting off with the opening statements, I'll let you go first.
All right. Hello, I'm Benjamin. Hello, I'm Benjamin. I'm a libertarian currently in Virginia. Basic idea of libertarianism is based off of what's sometimes called the non-aggression principle. Basically, the idea of first do no harm and then do what you want. The idea is that each individual has complete and utter control over their own life, and that no one, not even a government, could tell them otherwise. And to follow up with that, whenever a question comes about whether or not a person should have the right to do this, as long as it's not directly affecting somebody, there should be no issue of conflict, and a person should be allowed to do whatever they please. Again, so long as no one is harmed. And libertarians not only apply this to themselves, but often they apply it to other people, and specifically the government. So it's both an individualistic ideal, but it's also very, it's based off of the principle of individual liberties, where you can do whatever you want. And I think for whatever. All right. How much of that did you actually hear?
Well, I actually didn't hear that much of it, but I did hear basically your explanation of libertarian and what they believe in. After that, it kind of just froze off.
All right. But to summarize, it's a philosophy based off of, again, like I said, the non-aggression principle, in the idea that it applies not just to each individual, but also to the government. It's basically an individualistic but inclusive philosophy where you can believe whatever the hell you want, but as long as you're not forcing your beliefs on someone else, there's no problem. So my right to swing my fist ends where you begin.
Okay. So I'm Kelvin. I am Democrat. and I live currently in Illinois, which typically is known as a very well Democratic state, ninth Democratic state in the United States. And basically, the definition of Democrat is we are the older party. We tend to lean more liberal. I mean, there's socialist Democrats and there's liberal Democrats. Liberals are more about advancements and technology, changing the country as it is and moving it forward in the right direction. We tend to have solid issues, especially on the liberal side of things. Women's right to choose, LGBT inequality. I mean, those issues have changed over the years, of course, with having the liberal view, but we definitely do believe in solid issues, and we don't typically change our issues. And of course, there's those Democratic politicians, hence Hillary Clinton, who flop their issues from time to time, depending on the voters. Once again, liberals are all about advancement. Let's just say that. We're all about advancement, but if we don't keep up with the modern day issues, then we're not known as the party of advancement. We're known as the party of conservative, and you don't find many conservative Democrats, basically because they're few and far between. But once again, Democrat is one of the more solid issues that we stick with modern day things, and advancements are secondary opportunity and issues that we explain. And once again, we tend to flip-flop based on the generation or based on the community and modern day civilization as it is. So I'm Democrat because not just because my parents are Democrat, but also because a lot of the issues that the Democrats believe in are a lot of issues that I believe in. I was raised around all women, and I've learned that women's rights are important. So women's rights to choose is something that would branch off of my values as a person. So it's something that I'm going to talk a lot about and touch up on in the general debate, but that's just basically the summary of Democrat and what we believe in and why I specifically am Democrat.
Mm-hmm. All right. So first question we have is about LGBT issues. It's what are your personal beliefs on the matter, and how far should we go regarding gender identity and how many we should allow? So if you want to go ahead and lay the first answer, feel free.
As an individual Democrat, we're very strong in this issue. We're very strong pro LGBT marriage and equality. Of course, as Barack Obama, our current president, passed the LGBT marriage law, which allowed all people in all 50 states to basically get married to whoever they love. And I like this issue. This issue is it's a civil issue. We're all created equal. That is our basic beliefs. And depending on what people think, which you should get married to who you love. This is like way back, and this is before we were all born. There are people across the ocean who got married to their own family just because they were forced to. Now, we aren't even forced to. Just be happy you're not forced to get married to somebody else. Think about it. You can get married to who you want to. Other people should be able to get married to who they want to. LGBT equality is a civil issue, once again, and I'm going to repeat that because people need to know that under constitutional rights, we are created equal, and we should all be treated that we are created equal. So moving into that, LGBT marriage is something, and equality is something that we have to look at as we're all created equal, and we're all fair, and we all should be treated like that. So if you're not forced to marry who you don't want to, then you don't have to rant about somebody else getting married to who they want to. So
yeah, this is actually something libertarians tend to agree with Democrats on, just because of the nature. It's a liberty, as you correctly stated. However, I'm not sure that there is a government rule for marriage, because marriage, from a government standpoint, is really just a social contract between two people agreeing to, live together and share each other's burdens. And this really stems from the English common law way back when. So technically, if I was living with some other dude, technically we could be considered married, though a little bit of common sense has to go here. But it's really just an issue of, it's no one else's business what the hell goes on in your bedroom. Plain and simple. I wouldn't divulge my personal life to anyone, and honestly, if you're a friend, I'd care about it. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. And I've got quite a few friends and coworkers who fall on the other side of the aisle from me with regards to they are members of the LGBT community, and they're very good people, honest workers, hard-working people, and they have the same rights and same tendencies as us. Humans are social creatures by design, and everybody needs a companion. So why should we deny somebody who they choose to live with?
Okay, something I have just a rebuttal statement here. Based on the issue you said about the government and just the basic statement between those two that they'll live with each other. What I have seen, from what I've heard, and from my political party and my standpoint, the Constitution entitles that anybody is able to do anything, basically, with restrictions in our law enforcement, of course, because that's something at state and city level. But based on the Constitution, we're all created equal. So here's the thing. If you don't support somebody's right to marry somebody that they love, then why should we have to support somebody that you love? So it's basically the same thing. Somebody who is in the LGBTQ community is questioned because they're marrying a man. And it's basic family values that the Republicans like to show off, that it should be between a man and a woman, and the Bible says that. From what I've read, the Bible never says anything about that. So that's where I want to wrap up my rebuttal statement there, is the Constitution, which, quite frankly, is what runs the United States rather than our government, is basically supports gay marriage because everybody's created equal under the Constitution. So that's where I'm going to wrap up my rebuttal statement. Here we got another freeze here. So you're going to have to slow this video down just a second.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Back.
Okay. So did you hear everything I had to say?
I heard, yes, I did.
Okay.
I'm not going to go too far. I'm just going to add on. My view on family values is a family is really just a group of people we choose to associate with and have closer bonds than, say, close friends. So family values are basically just you take care of each other, you share each other's burdens, both in good times and bad, and that you take care of each other. That's why there's some people I'd call my brother, even though there ain't no way in hell we're related in terms of blood. So that's just my personal view on what a family is a group of people who take care of each other.
I agree, and that's how it should stay, especially with the LGBT rights too. Whoever you marry, they should be taking care of you. So moving on, do we have a next question?
Yeah, and this is pro-life, pro-choice. Basically, where do you stand and where does your party typically stand? I'm going to go ahead and answer this one first. Libertarians are actually very divided on this issue because is it a right to choose? Is it property rights, technically speaking? I guess that's the best way to call it. That's the only word we have. Or is it a right to life issue? My personal beliefs are that I'm pro-life. I don't want my future wife to ever get an abortion. God forbid that ever happens. But I will say that unfortunately, we just can't ensure that we can't be forcing people to have children that were born of rape, or we can't force people to carry out pregnancies in cases where it's medically unadvisable for them, either because of an ectopic pregnancy or because of a heart condition or some other medical issue. So with those exceptions, and I'd say viability outside the womb, which is actually the current law, anything after that is not kosher, so to speak. And I think that's a fair compromise, just because once the unborn child does reach that point, it's kind of like you are killing something that very well could be alive. I think that is the point of no return in my eyes. I can understand why some people would think it's a life-changing decision and that people should have as much time to think about it as possible. But at the point of, again, viability, it's more we're playing God here. And I don't think that's something anyone has the right to do.
I agree. And being Democrat and highly Democrat, I will never support a Republican. I will never support a Libertarian or Green Party candidate. But being Democrat, we're very strong pro-choice. With restrictions, though. My personal opinion, there has to be restrictions. You cannot kill a baby that's 9 months old. It should not be accepted. And that is what has to be paid attention to. Those are the restrictions that need to be brought forth in front of the government and the people in terms of restrictions of right to choose. Now, it's proven that in terms of rape, if you were, or rape or incest, if you are to get pregnant, it does prove that 99.9% of abortions do stabilize the mental position of being raped or a victim of incest. So with that being said, we have to look at how people react to this. A lot of the time, you're going to find people who rely off the Bible, who rely off God, and in my opinion, and I am a Christian, I do belong to the Lutheran Church. I have very strong views on my religion, and I'm very religious. But in terms of this issue, where it comes to the point where it can help your mental capacity in terms of how you are in the world and how you are in the future, it's where the government and religion does not control your body. It's what makes this world better is that we have less mental illnesses, and we can prevent mental illnesses if we just put these restrictions on abortion, but still allow legal abortions. Now, moving into my final part of this, never, ever, ever would an abortion after 5 months old be acceptable to me. Never.
Mm-hmm.
After 5 months old is where you start to develop your heart. You start to develop your typical organs. I mean, it could happen earlier depending on your pregnancy and when you have conceived. But this is something that just can't happen. You cannot abort after 5 months. It's not acceptable. Before that, and maybe even with an exception of 4 months, but before 4 months, there's not organs. They rely off of the food and protein that their parents give them. So with that being said, thinking about that logically is saying we're giving this woman a right to choose her own health standards, not the government or religions controlling her. What the Republicans like to do is they believe in pro-life. Now, Donald Trump, we don't really know what political party he belongs to, but he was Democratic, he was independent, whatever he is, but he's
He was a
pro-life
member
now.
of the Reform Party at one point
Yeah.
until what's-his-face KKK member joined the party and became an outspoken member of it. Then he's like, I don't want to be associated with that filth. And then he left the Reform Party even after being their presidential nominee in 2000.
Yeah, and with that being said, it just has to be put into law and be enacted that the government does not control a woman. The government does not control a man. The government does not control anybody. We are a free country, and that's how it needs to stay. And thinking about it, under a free country is where our health should fall.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I actually completely agree with that. And you could extend those to free speech, free expression. Let's just call it free expression at this point, just because that's the easiest word that summarizes all the point: press, speech, religion, etc. But again, on this issue, it's kind of like, I don't like to use the term rape and incest, because if it's non-consensual incest, which is what's implied here, that's already categorized under the rape issue. So I just like to cut it out for brevity's sake. But, and of course, I'm not from Arkansas. I do not condone cousin loving here or anything closer than that. But, you know, it's one of those things where, again, you have the right to love who you want, but at the same time, let's also ensure that, hey, we're not going to force people to have a child that they don't want, provided it's not a covering up for a mistake, because it can be used. Unfortunately, it is used this way in rare cases, and thank God it's only rare, but I would love it to be zero. Unfortunately, there are cases where it has been used to cover up for, oops, I forgot to wear protection. Which that should never be something that's ever done, because that's saying that I'm not going to take responsibility for my actions.
Yeah. And something else about that, I'd like to just follow up on your statement about protection. Before we ever invest in full-blown abortions, we should always invest in making sure that our younger population knows how to use protection and knows what protection actually does, because both kinds of protection are 99.9% effective on basic,
I would say can confirm that it works, but I'm not going to go into anything more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you. Protection definitely does need to be invested more than abortion.
And also education about, the only make sure that contraceptive education is included, but also make sure you mention that the only 100% guaranteed way to not get pregnant or get an STD is to, as my father says, if you don't want a kid, don't stick it in.
Yeah, I agree. Now, that's completely right, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, but some people just do it for the pleasure, but sometimes it gets to the point where people need to be more mature about what actions and steps they take before they consider abortion. They need to be considering their risk, and they need to be considering the protection they're taking, and then they consider backup plans in case it does happen. Now, I feel like if you are dumb enough to get pregnant and you know the risk, then you should be highly expected to keep the baby. But it's definitely something that if you're raped, that's something where we're going to have to look at very closely.
Of course, medically advisable cases again. Just because, you know, if you have a heart condition, it could actually be dangerous. You could actually die if you carry the pregnancy to term or if during labor. And again, ectopic pregnancies are another one. But those ectopics are very, very, very rare. But,
well, if you have a heart condition, you shouldn't be having sex in the first place.
True. That don't stop people.
Yeah.
So third question is kind of like with the advent of course, terrorism, and of course with the some of the shootings, high-profile shootings that have taken place in this nation, what should be done about firearms, and just what should be done about firearms?
I'll start this one here. So I wanted to start this one because I know where firearms go with Ben. We're looking at a country that is in basically global crisis. We're the melting pot of the world, but there's people who can't even trust that we have immigration into our country, and the fact that we are allowing immigrants is great. It's great, but we need to be looking more at who's actually in our country. Now, I think gun restrictions to some extent are appropriate, especially among suspected terrorists. Now, we can't just look somebody in the eye because they're Muslim and say they're terrorists. Our government, particularly with information from the NRA, knows that, or not NRA, NSA, which is National Surveillance Agency, which basically, yes, security spies on us all. But they know suspected terrorists. They know the people who have been on known ISIS websites and are in contact with ISIS. We can put them on the no-fly list, but we can't restrict them from the United States Second Amendment. And here's the thing. That, my friend, is screwed up. No matter what political party you support, no matter how strong you are on your guns, if you can't put a suspected terrorist on a list to prevent them from buying or selling firearms, you're setting this country up for more and more and more mass shootings. You can't go and you can't blame this on Obama. You can blame this on the NRA. You can blame this on the gun lobby. You can't blame it on Obama. You can't blame it on the government. Here's the thing. We have to be smart. We have to have common sense about where we're going with our gun restrictions and our gun laws. Because right now we're careless. It's carelessness. We're letting people buy and sell guns who are terrorists, known terrorists. And we're trapping them in our country by putting them on the no-fly list. If you're going to trap somebody in the country, least you could do is take away their guns so they can't provide any harm. Jeez. I mean, it's not right. It's not correct, and we need to use common sense to prevent suspected terrorists from creating mass shootings. Now, if I look Ben in the eye right now and say, you look like you're a terrorist, I don't think you should get a gun, that is incorrect. That is not right. That is where the restrictions based on the Democratic Party's laws go too far. But if we have a suspected terrorist who lives in my city and is planning to shoot up downtown, they should not have a gun in the first place. Now, Democrats, we don't want to repeal your Second Amendment. We don't want to take away your guns, especially libertarians. And I know that libertarians are strong in this Green Party, and Republicans, we don't want to take away your guns. We just don't want you to be shot by somebody who shouldn't have a gun in the first place. And that means suspected terrorists. So wrapping up here, are we going to be careless about this issue and let suspected terrorists get their hands on assault rifles? Or are we going to be smart and provide background checks to certain extents and restrict people who are in contact with our worst enemy to buy assault weapons and restrict them from buying them. That's the common sense issue. Is that what we want to take, or do we want to take a step to more mass shootings so we can blame it on President Obama?
Well, here's the thing. The no fly, no buy has the Democrat proposed one. The Republicans actually in Congress, both houses actually proposed a version of this that included something that is exceedingly important, which is, of course, the due process idea. The Democrats' plan lacked this. And, of course, due process is a whole 14th Amendment issue. And it's actually why in the Supreme Court case, Chicago versus McDonald, it was upheld that individuals also had the right to bear arms, as in the keep and bear part. But I'd also like to touch on it. Assault weapon is a made-up term by the media. It was created in the 90s. It's based off of cosmetic features instead of the true assault rifle, which is based off of mechanical features.
Well, they use those. They use those.
No. An assault rifle, according to the U.S. military, is any firearm that can fire an intermediate cartridge and is capable of select fire, meaning it has a semi-automatic mode and it has at least one fully automatic mode, meaning burst fire and true full auto. And true assault rifles are exceedingly hard to come by. They are still legal for purchase, but you have to fill out so many forms, and a good one will cost you about $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah, well, that's provided
as
by
a base
ISIS.
price. But again, like I said, you have to fill out an incredible amount of forms to even be able to purchase one legally, including, depending on the situation, you can get away with not having this, but often you need a CLEO signature, which is Chief Law Enforcement Officer. So there is that whole and of course, you have to actually go through an additional background check with this. If you have an FFL, which of course requires multiple background checks and even more paperwork and tax stamps and all this type of stuff, that's also the issue. I'm of course a proud firearms owner, working on getting my concealed handgun permit. I need to go through a class. I need to go through background checks. I have to jump through so many hoops just to exercise my constitutional rights. Background checks are fine, in my personal opinion, simply because, hey, it's just due process. It's making sure that I'm not a criminal. I'm not mentally unstable. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue against that. Waiting periods, those are debatable simply because of the whole, suicide issue, which is actually the vast majority of statistically reported gun deaths in this nation. And those, sure, they'd go down a bit if you banned guns, but the vast majority of them would just change form to jumpings, hangings, stabbings, what have you. And not only that, but if we limit it down to, and if we eliminate a lot of the gang violence that happens, which the vast majority of gang violence is with illegally obtained and illegally owned firearms anyway, if you eliminate all that, we actually have a drastically lower homicide rate than most developed nations, especially with regards to our size. And this is reported by the CDC, the World Fact Book, the FBI, the UN, and various other reputable sources, not forces, derp. But also the CDC found that there were anywhere between 500,000 and 3 million legal defensive uses, which an independent source in Texas confirmed that 90% of those were actually resulted in 0 shots being fired. So 90% of the time, just drawing your gun is enough to protect you from any reasonable crime. In addition, the fastest growing gun ownership groups are actually minorities, women, and the LGBT community. So they are actually deciding that, hey, maybe we need to defend ourselves too.
But you got to think, you went just a little too far in terms of the background checks and waiting periods and stuff. I mean, you said waiting periods is debatable, but background checks you fully support. Not all states do that. You gotta think about the states that actually do that. And obviously, we have down in Florida or in Virginia where you live, are they using common sense gun laws? I mean, we have Virginia Tech, we have Orlando, Florida. Well, where are we
Both
going from there?
gun-free zones.
Well,
Obviously, that didn't stop the shooter,
so
even
then why
though
did the
in
shooter
theory
have a
it
gun?
should have.
Why did the shooter
Well,
have a gun? Why?
because even though they had multiple red flags, and especially in the case of Omar Mateen in Orlando, even though you had those red flags popping up, and he was interviewed by the FBI 3 times, and they actually confirmed that they didn't want to stop him from, to at least check him out even further, simply because they didn't want to be seen as racist, which is absolutely freaking ridiculous. And you can confirm this by looking up various news sources. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but the Virginia Tech shooter, which was multiple years ago, again, he had multiple red flags. The Colorado movie theater, the Batman shooter, or whatever the hell you want to call him, he was definitely mentally unstable. He had multiple red flags. And any firearms dealer worth their salt would have immediately known this. Anybody with their families would have immediately known this. And part of it's a responsibility, especially in the case of the Newtown, Connecticut shooter. That was something where there should have been no way he was even allowed near a firearm. And I'm not going to say that it's more of a individual responsibility issue, because it is. You just have to be responsible not to leave your guns and ammo together. I mean, that's something anybody who's been around guns their entire life has been told repeatedly, is you keep your guns and ammo separate unless you are carrying for self-defense, because then it's a bad idea. And of course, like I said, I've been around guns my entire freaking life.
Now I want to bring up. I want to bring up something that's just a bit different from what we're talking about, and what that is that we don't do enough testing. I mean, not in terms of background checks, gun testing and social testing, socially testing, whatever you want to call it, period. I'm going to tell you something about our National Rifle Association, which probably has a lower IQ level than you do. They're not letting our government do anything to look at how guns are. Here's the thing. Here's an example. And to those who think that the Democrats are trying to take your guns, I want to tell you this. This is my philosophy. This is Hillary Clinton's philosophy. We differ on a lot, but think about it. Seatbelt laws in cars, that was tested. Having your phone in your hand, that was tested. And we were able to create cars that have hand-free cellular devices. We were to enforce seatbelt laws, and notice we tested all of that, and you still have the right to drive a car at a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to cigarettes, which I will never do, is we tested cigarettes. We found out what's in them. We got the Surgeon General warning. And notice, you still have the right to smoke a cigarette at a certain age.
Alcohol is the same thing.
Alcohol is the same thing. Now, that needs to be the same way with the guns. The NRA, you need to get some common sense and go back to school and know what they're doing. Because once you are affected by the mass shootings in this country, which they're going to continue if the NRA doesn't get their head out of between their knees, then it's going to happen. It's going to keep happening. We need to test guns. The CDC needs to test them, and we need to take appropriate action and enforce laws based on the test results. And that means socially testing with people and guns, and gun testing in general.
The last thing I'm going to add is the Department of Homeland Security actually stated a few years back that the AR-15, which by the way is the most popular rifle in America, is actually ideal in the case of home defense, especially with regards to women and children, because of its small caliber, its low recoil. I mean, you've probably seen, there are actually videos on the internet where a person literally puts an AR-15 butt against his you know, junk, and then shoots off multiple rounds, and you can't even see an expression on his face change. People have put it right up against their face and done the same thing. And simply put, it's a very good firearm in the case of home defense for people who have a smaller frame, simply because it's easier for them to control. Regardless of what Joe Biden says about women, just get a shotgun and fire it off your porch.
Well, what does that have to do about socially testing and?
Oh, no, I would actually love it. And this is actually, believe it or not, the primary function of the NRA. Yes, they are a very powerful gun lobby, but they don't really actually lobby too much. They just they just well time where they place their money. They know where to put their money in order to make it most effective. But their primary focus is actually to educate people about firearms. You are drilled whenever you go to a gun range about, you know, basic gun safety commandments. For example, always keep it pointed in a safe direction, aka away from people. Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. Always keep it on safe until ready to shoot. Always keep it unloaded until ready to shoot. And remember, they are the ones who said every gun is loaded even when it's not. So their primary focus is to educate people and to ensure that people actually know how to be responsible with regards to firearms. That is their primary focus. Well, then again, the vast majority of gun owners in this nation are not members of the NRA. There's only approximately 5 million members, whereas the amount of gun owners in America is about 120 million. At least those are the ones that volunteered their information or the government already knows about.
Well, it's not working too well, obviously.
Well,
because we're not educating our citizens well enough.
Most mass shooters are crazies anyway.
Well, then why isn't the NRA restricting them? Why is the NRA accepting good background checks?
Again, they did, provided there is due process. And there is a federal, and of course, to purchase a gun, it is actually federal law. You have to go through a background check, period. Hell, now due to an executive order, if you have the materials required to thread a barrel, you are actually considered a manufacturer. And you have to pay the requisite taxes and all that, and basically get an FFL. In addition, the last point I'd like to make is even the so-called gun show loophole, that's technically only applicable if I am literally selling a firearm to somebody who's closely related to me or a friend, a very close friend. And even then, it's highly recommended that you still go through an intermediary so you can run the background check. And even the NRA recommends this in some cases. So a lot of these loopholes are actually non-existent, other than the fact that, hey, if I wanted to sell a gun to my brother, sure, I know him, but at the same time, I still should probably run a background check just to be on the safe side, and that way I take no liability.
Yeah. I have no other points to make on that. I don't want to go all night about guns.
Oh, yeah, no. So the next question is, especially due to the housing crash that started the recession in 2008, was it caused by overregulation? Was it caused by deregulation? Was it caused by lack of responsibility, or just predatory capitalism and shady practices?
Well, I'm neutral on this issue. I don't know much about this issue, and it's not something that I focus on a lot of my time. But yeah, I don't know much about it. I haven't researched it as much as some have. It's not as important to me as some have. If you want to talk basically a little bit about it, then I can probably rebuttal or branch off of stuff to say.
Yeah, well, the housing market, it's very finicky. Real estate's always very finicky. It almost takes an idiot savant to do very well at it. Enter Mr. Trump. And what it was really caused by was, I'll admit, it was caused by shady practices and overregulation. And when I say overregulation, a lot of these regulations create a set of rules to play within. And if you can find the right loophole, if you get the right lawyer who can invest the time to find the loophole, he can find a way to make you be able to do whatever you want. And this is what happened because they did the subprime lending and all sorts of other things where they artificially inflated the value of the house based off of what it would be worth in the future. They were adjusting for inflation in the present. And of course, this was allowed simply because of the way the rules were set up. If we had truly deregulated the market, and of course, if people were responsible enough to live within their means, and this is partially an education issue, not necessarily a regulation issue. Again, this is kind of libertarianism in its general. Freedom requires a little bit of responsibility. And again, if people were smart enough to realize that, hey, this house isn't actually worth that much right now, so I shouldn't be buying at this incredibly high value. It's basically the housing market through the regulations they had. They decided to set up a bunch of shady practices to artificially inflate the value of a house. And all of a sudden, people started realizing, wait a second, I'm not going to buy this house on the market because this is just way over my price range. And then all of a sudden, everybody started selling because, hey, this house is worth this now. Well, no, the bank is saying it's worth that because it's going to be worth that in 15 years if everything stays the same. And that's where people get confused. And the last point I'd like to make is you could call it predatory capitalism. You could call it predatory capitalism, but that's more created by the fact that regulations are actually set up to benefit large corporations instead of what a true free market is, which of course promotes competition both between large businesses and between large and small businesses. And we haven't actually had true free market since before Teddy Roosevelt.
I have to say I have no policy on this. I have no comment. I have no response. I'll have to do a lot more digging in about what this means and how it affects the United States as it is now. But until then, I have no comment, no position on this.
Yeah, and I guess I can add that certain places in the nation did experience smaller crashes simply because Texas, for example, they had a smaller crash simply because they had theirs before when the oil market in America fell out. And they also instituted a bunch of laws that made it so that you couldn't overvalue a home. And therefore, the crash was not as bad. I mean, it still happened because it was a nationwide event. But Texas didn't have as bad a crash, especially in military towns like San Antonio.
Yeah. So I'm going to halt the debate here. Let's go ahead and take a quick intermission where we shut off the camera and shut off the volume just for our sake means, and we'll be back maybe within a couple of minutes. So just a quick intermission.
Yep, get some water, refresh up.
Yeah. So this will go off down for a little while.
Let me stop the live.
I'm not going to be stopping this live stream. I mean, it'll just be an intermission.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Alrighty. So,
Okay, we're back here with this political policies debate. We've been through, what, 4 questions now?
yes.
The majority of those were guns, right?
I think that was what we spent the most time on, yeah.
Well, we still have a lot of issues left. So if you want to hop
Yes.
right into the next question, we can get that
Yes,
started.
and this is, I believe you said this one came from a burner, someone feeling the burn.
Probably
This is
feeling,
a question.
probably feeling the Hillary now, but
Yeah. Uh, you could feel the shivers going up my spine. But this was with regards to free college and healthcare, the well-known Bernie
yeah.
policies. And when I say free healthcare, I mean single payer system. What type of what would this basically do to the economy, and how would it even be possible to fund this?
I want to start off with this issue because I have more of the views that reflect off of this. And I mean, I'm not saying you don't know about it, but I'm saying that I have more of the issues that reflect off of this. Free college, $15 minimum wage, and free healthcare, affordable healthcare, whatever you want to call it, is not something that we can immediately jump into. Why? Because if we jump into $15 minimum wage, we're going to be seeing the worst economic crash since the Great Depression. Partly because we're going to be seeing jobs that go into, we're going to be seeing jobs that start firing people because they don't have enough money. Basically, they don't make enough money to pay all of their employees. This includes places like McDonald's. This includes places like Dairy Queen or Hardee's, any of these places. Now, if you think about it, it's same with college. We can't have free college because it's going to mess with the finance. And finance is probably what is running each corporation, each college, or each healthcare system in this country. And if we make it free, then there's no way to continue supporting basically the workers of what we believe in based on that. So if you think about it, like I said about the economy, we make $15 minimum wage. It's going to throw us into the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. Something that no politician is going to be able to fix alone. But if we talk about free college, it's going to be talking about lower education. They're going to be looking for very, very, very particular students, particularly high-income students who have money and have enough money to be donors or donate to the college on a regular basis rather than paying. So it's going to take over. If we made everything free without having a process to take it on, we're going to be, and we have another debate difficulty. We'll get back to that very shortly. So we're gonna bear with us here. We're gonna try to get this back up. I'm sorry, this happened 3 times. I don't know why it's happening. Do I got you back? Okay, we got him back. Where did I stop? When did you freeze?
I think it's just my computer is still warming up because, like I said, I had to get a brand new one just recently.
Okay, so where did you freeze out? What's the last thing you heard me say?
This was you were still on the free college thing, and
Okay.
I believe I'm trying to remember what your last word was. It was.
Well, I don't need that exactly. I'll just summarize from college. First off, if we have $15 minimum wage immediately, it's going to throw our economic job system into an economic collapse worse than the Great Depression. If we give free college, they're going to be looking for people who are rich that will donate to the college rather than those who deserve to be in the college based on either GPA or the intelligence or qualifications they have to get into the college. So basically, we're going to turn into, not that we already aren't, but we're going to turn into a country of greediness. It's going to be all about money, all about conserving. conservative. I mean, those three things, free college, $15 minimum wage, and free healthcare, is all basically saying all at once conservative. I mean, you're going to have to conserve your money if you're going to pay a worker. So there goes a chunk of McDonald's workers who need this job to get into college, or need this job to put food on the table, clothes on their back, or a roof over their families' heads. So there goes their job. They're out on the streets now. And then you have college. We have these smart kids who need to get into college and have a good college education. But we have college letting in people who are rich, so they'll get donations rather than actually paying the general college fee, because it's happened before, and not based on the qualifications from high school. And in terms of healthcare, not that it's as greedy as the other two issues in terms of our country, but it's definitely something where they're going to be looking for the richer ones, the more rich ones, and they're going to be fully covering the more rich ones. It kind of goes hand in hand with the college scenario. So I'll let you go ahead.
Chime in, yeah. Well, you actually do bring a very good point. In general, broad brushstrokes, if we were to immediately jump to a $15 minimum wage, you are correct in asserting that it would, as I like to jokingly summarize it, I'll quote Archer here, or paraphrase Archer, make the reference. Do you want another Great Depression? Because that's how you get another Great Depression. I'd actually venture to say that perhaps a Swiss system of dealing with the minimum wage is a lot better, which is have no minimum wage, but let the unions actually do their damn jobs, and let the unions and collective bargaining do the job. And I know it's kind of like, wait, a libertarian is supporting a union. Well, it's your right to join together into a collective if you so desire. But that said, we shouldn't be forcing people to join them. But again, like I said, the Swiss system is basically, there's no minimum wage. Each union, you take care of that if that's what you desire. Each worker can negotiate on their own if they desire. And this is better able to reflect local dynamics with regards to economics, because in uber small town Wisconsin, where my soon-to-be in-laws and wife grew up, she can work one job and go to college full-time and still afford an apartment, whereas most of the places I've lived, I'd have to work two jobs full-time, and even then, I'd have trouble making ends meet if I wanted to live just at the edge of my means, not even comfortably. Especially if you get into places like DC, LA, New York City, Boston, and if we decide to go on to the so-called free college thing, we'd actually be depressing the value of the college degree. For example, 50 years ago, or really 50 to 100 years ago, before secondary education in high school was subsidized by various levels of government, if you had a high school education, or hell, even attended high school to any degree, you could make a very comfortable living, and you could actually support a family, like I said, comfortably, or even fairly well if you were extremely frugal. But nowadays, a high school education is worthless, basically. I hate saying worthless because there's obviously a value to it, but if we want to see that same thing happen to a four-year degree, go ahead, let's subsidize college education, or university as they call it in Europe. And interestingly enough, the same thing with healthcare. My personal solution for healthcare is the typical free market response. Let's open up so you can buy health insurance across state lines. Let's not do it single payer, but instead, not just opening it up, but allowing you to go a la carte, meaning you can pay for the services that you want. And if you don't want a service, you don't need it, because me and my fiance, I mean, we don't need the whole contraceptive coverage. We really don't, because both of us, we both want to be parents, of course. And it would be a waste of money for us to be paying for this, even though under every healthcare system, now that it's law, they have to provide it for us, and therefore we're paying for it, even though we have zero intention of using it. So I'd personally rather a system where if you don't use something, you can keep the money you would be using for that. So that way you could spend it on things you would use.
Yeah. And something that the reason I didn't support Bernie Sanders in this election is because of those reasons, that his views would essentially cause an economic collapse. And two, he was so fond of the Obamacare and everything, and he has supported the Obamacare, but he called for free health care. Now, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but I think that makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
Really.
no, there's no such thing as free. The tax hikes that would be required to even reasonably consider paying for this, I believe one figure basically said that after 4 years of taxing the top 1% at 100% of their yearly income, to manage to pay for this, you would still wind up running out of money.
Yeah.
Okay, that just goes to show you how unaffordable a single-payer system is here in America, especially if we're going to be completely opening up the borders like a lot of Dems want. Simply because, hey, a lot of these people at first wouldn't be paying into the system, and it's actually the same problem that we encounter with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Is as the population keeps growing, we're going to be less and less able to fund it. So kind of more, we should be focusing on privatizing it and giving people more options instead of forcing people onto one system where they have zero options and zero choice in the matter. Just, again, that whole, hey, you get to choose what the hell happens in your own life.
Yeah. I agree, but I don't have really much more to add on to that. So if you have the next question.
Yeah, and this one's actually an interesting one. How would you go about environmental regulations or lack thereof, and how would you ensure that the environment is protected for future generations?
I think I'll start this one.
Go ahead.
Okay. I love this issue. This issue is something that one of my top 5 issues that I support. Environmental justice is something that's very important. It's simple in terms of my views, and it's not something you have to go into deep detail with. Here it is, and it's summarized and simplified. No fracking. We can continue coal mining, but there has to be restrictions on how much we do with it. Also, we must install solar wind panels to power portions of large and medium-sized cities, which would, one, cut down on the bills that are paid by the people, because you don't have to pay for air or you don't have to pay for sun. All you got to do is pay for maintenance based on that. And also, it would make our environment so much cleaner to use electricity through that rather than using it through our current way of using it. I think we should invest also in new ways of running vehicles. That includes solar vehicles. And I was reading something on the internet, which I think is a great idea, but it would cost billions to do. That is making basically solar panel roads, so that when cars drive, they're basically powered based on the roads. Now, it costs billions, but imagine how much of an impact it would make on the environment, which is essentially zero, especially if the cars line up with that too. So it's basically just an essential issue based on installing electricity that is not harmful to the air and how we live and breathe. And it's also about cutting down on the amount of things we do to our environment, including fracking, conserving some of our natural resources for future generations to use in terms of emergencies, especially if our world were to run out of something, or if we were to be under attack in terms of EMPs or it's stuff based on that, because it truly is possible. But this is something that is not much of a detailed issue, but it's basically the basics, protecting the environment.
Libertarian response on this is actually very mixed. A lot of people say there's really no role for government in environmental regulations. However, I can see the argument that some libertarians would make for government to be involved. I think I'm halfway there, but I'd love to see a lot more proof that it is man-made. I'm not leaving it out. I'm just very much a skeptic. There are a lot of natural processes, Milankovitch cycles, how much we actually attribute to climate change, the fact that we are actually in an interglacial period, so naturally temperatures are going to rise, and various other global long-term geologic time scale factors. I'm not completely leaving it out, and this is something I think a lot of people misunderstand about conservatives or even libertarians, is that a lot of us, myself especially, I'm very much an outdoorsman. I love to go hunt, I love to go fishing, I love to hike and swim and bike and all this type of stuff. So of course I want the environment there for my kids, for my grandkids, for future generations, because God put us on this earth for a limited time. We should enjoy it. And I want to do everything in my power to protect it. But I think this can best be solved from an education standpoint. Educate people, let them know that, hey, we have an environment here. We have some of the most beautiful land on the planet here in America. And not only that, but other places in the world will depend on this. And that, hey, maybe we should be looking at maybe boosting the profitability of companies that do protect environmental issues, that do promote environmental safety and responsibility with regards to green issues. I do think the Green Party, I think that's what they really should be focusing on instead of trying to hijack a bunch of issues. I think they really need to focus on being just like a single issue thing, or maybe even focus to, again, like I said, education, because that's what can boost it. If we make it profitable, if we accept that, hey, we can change the free market, consumers are the most powerful force in the world. If we don't want to buy something, we're just not going to buy it. But if we make it acceptable or even fashionable to go green, hey, we can affect some real change without regulation.
I want to say, and you can even search this on the internet, since the world has invested in more solar power energy, more wind power energy, and I even have that around my area, especially in rural areas, the hole in the ozone is depleting. It really is. Not even lying. It's a true issue.
Because it is true.
Yeah, it has shrunk, and scientists have said by the year 2050, it is expected to be completely shut. And that is because we're investing in new, clean energy that helps us, and we're not letting off pollution. But we have to find a way that factories can run off of something that will continue to help the ozone shut. That includes this. I read an article one time about a country in no, not a country in Russia. A basic, how do I say this? A basic corporation factory in Russia that runs based off water. So everything that comes out of those long pipes is steam rather than polluted energy and such scenarios. And they say it works really well. Plus, it costs them less than $2 million every 5 years to maintain.
Mhm. I've actually heard
That's
that idea before.
that's the kind of stuff we have to invest in if that ozone layer continues to shrink.
Mhm. And again, I'm not going to deny that there is a hole in the ozone and that, hey, the environment is changing. It's a fact. It's well known. It's well documented. The causes we are still researching, though I think a lot of scientists are starting to move towards, hey, maybe we do have a small effect. Or some of the more radical ones are saying we have a gigantic effect or we are the primary factor. And I'm not leaving that out. I never will. But let's be skeptics here and ensure that if we are going to put any regulations, that they're the only way to protect each individual's property rights. And I do think if somebody is polluting your water or polluting your air, you should have the right to sue them because, I mean, isn't that what the courts exist for? Is to protect your rights and your ability to, live, because that is the only legitimate response or the only legitimate role in government is to protect life, liberty, and property. Um, in no particular order, and of course, when one contradicts the other, always fall on the side of liberty. But
I
again,
agree.
this is a liberty issue. Again, just protect everybody's liberty to have free air, free water, free. And when I say free, I mean
Yeah,
free of
it is
pollution.
free. We don't have to pay for it. And if you think about it, installing solar panels, installing wind farms. I'm sorry, I have an ad going off in the background on a tab that I have open.
Mm.
So if you think about it, installing wind farms, installing solar panels, and powering, like I said, this is my policy, particular. If I was president, this is what I'd enact. That if we install those to power large and medium-sized communities, then not only do we cut the maintenance bill, and not only do we cut the general bill that we have to pay on electricity, but we also make a cleaner environment. And that's what we need if we want that ozone to continue to deplete, or the hole in the ozone to continue to deplete, is we need to invest in modern day things that will help our environment. We have all this modern day technology, and we never put it to matter while using in terms of protecting our environment. And we have Donald Trump on the other side of the aisle who doesn't believe climate change is real. Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
going
just
to
going to
say
let you
anything
talk
about that. Like I said, orange spray tan is, of course, and again, I have a bunch of punches to throw at Hillary. Specifically, she should also be in orange, but that's something for another time.
Let's say that Donald Trump is president. Oh, jeez.
That I will say this: I would definitely have my popcorn ready for that.
He would defund our basic energy plans and what we have put forward and invested in to help our environment. What's that going to do to our environment? Not even lying.
Let's be honest.
I want you to answer on this. I mean,
what's
that going to do to our environment?
I have no freaking clue, to be quite honest with you. But the idea that Trump could be president, I think part of that is, I believe there was a Huffington Post article. I read it just for the laughs, but they did make a.
Sorry, I had to shush somebody. It's my bad.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, the closet.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, the final point they made about how realistic a Trump presidency is was because they jokingly said, "Hey, guess what? Everybody has this closet anarchist complex in them." They called it the Jesse Ventura effect.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota elected a professional wrestler as their governor.
Mm-hmm. So what's our next issue that we have to talk about? Then this would be
I was going to say,
revitalizing the economy.
how is it possible to revitalize the economy without a crash? Especially if we're going to go the route of, especially if it's, do you deregulate or do you overregulate?
I want to propose something here. Let's skip this issue for another time,
Mm-hmm.
just for sake of that we don't have a major crash right now.
Okay.
And that we don't really have this effect on us really at the time. It's something we're gonna have to talk about if we're going towards a crash. They haven't fully went through with Brexit yet, or Brexit, whatever you want to call it. So we could have a crash then. That's the time to talk about revitalizing it.
Skeptical of whether or not there's going to be a crash, simply because British economy has done much better than the rest of Europe, except maybe Germany. Simply because, number one, they stuck with the pound, and number two, they're a little bit economically disconnected from the rest of Europe, rest of the Eurozone, especially a lot of the Mediterranean nations that have shady banking practices, shady everything. And really, they just avoided the whole mess with Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Italy. They really just avoided that whole mess by saying, hey, we're going to stick to ourselves a tiny bit. So I think that they're going to be a lot more stabilized with regards to if they do fully go through it. Honestly, I'm kind of the opinion that they're going to be in constant negotiations, because that's it's going to be like Brexit, but not really, because the government definitely doesn't want to leave.
I agree. Yeah. So we're skipping this issue. What's our next issue on the list?
Believe it or not, it's what, in our opinion, is the most important U.S. issue, and how would you address that?
Okay. I'll let you go first.
Okay. You know, honestly, I don't want to say I'm going to be blunt on this, but the most important issue facing the United States today is, are we going to retain our autonomy, or are we going to go through on this whole globalization thing? And also, are we really meant to be Team America World Police? Honestly, I think the best option is we really do need to maintain our autonomy. We have a very unique national identity. We're extremely independent. We are a dominant power in the United States. We are a dominant power in the world, is what I meant to say. And not only that, but the president is called the leader of the free world. So we need to maintain that power. We need to maintain this idea of American exceptionalism. But at the same time, we really do not need to be involved in other nations. We should not be nation building. We should not be regime changing. We have zero business meddling with other nations, especially militarily. It's called the Department of Defense, though it has never really changed its role from being the Department of War. And honestly, sure, we can be involved in international affairs from a diplomatic standpoint. We can protect our interests overseas, but we really should not use our military. That doesn't mean we need to weaken it. We just need to be more efficient with our funding. We need to ensure that our military still and always will remain the best trained and equipped in the world. But we need to realize that it's a defense force, not an offense force, not a regime change force, not a proxy war fighting world police force. It's not our business to go in and how to rule themselves.
Mm-hmm. We have another freeze here, so let's see. We're counting off here. Let's see. This is the fifth freeze. So we're gonna try to fix this freeze here again before I go ahead and hop off with my issue. Um, we're gonna wait for this freeze to end, and I want my viewers to stay. So if you can stay, please, or our viewers to stay, please stay. While we get this worked out for the fifth time. So we're waiting for Ben to come back on before I start my individual response on this question, which is basically our most important policy that affects us and how would we acknowledge it and enact it dependently. So we're gonna wait for Ben to come back for this to occur. So we're still waiting for him to come back. And it's so great this would happen on the last issue here of this debate tonight. He should be rejoining soon. I mean, he's exited the debate broadcast, so he should be re-entering it very soon, actually. So we wait for him to rejoin us. I guess we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and take a quick intermission. Waiting for him. Oh, well, he's back. So
Yeah, that was weird.
we'll stick around.
That was weird.
This is. We did a little something on here while you were gone called "Count How Many Times This Is Frozen" during this debate.
You know, yeah.
We counted about 5 times, so
How much of that?
It's okay.
How much did y'all? Wow, y'all. As if it were left to any doubt where I'm from.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start where you left off. Well, with the most important issue. Personally, the most important issue to me is the basic. It's just our country is just. My issue really isn't a real issue based on, like policy. But I can tell you my biggest fear, and we talked about everything, every most important issue to me. We talked about it. And based on my answers, those are my biggest issues. And if you want to go rewatch those, then you'll have to rewatch the video.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what's most important to me, and this is not an election live stream or a debate, but it's going to be on this last issue.
Mm-hmm.
The most important issue to me is that we elect somebody who is going to get it done. And that's not our friend Donald Trump. Now,
would his presidency be entertaining? For the wrong reasons, yes.
Pull up the chair and pop the popcorn. But make sure you refill on butter, because Donald Trump,
he needs it to slick his hair forward.
Yep. Now I'm gonna have to basically skip on this issue, but if you want to hear my actual importance, is all the issues combined.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I think the most important issue in this current election is probably nothing that we actually talked about. It's SCOTUS, or Supreme Court of the United States.
Yes. Yes.
I'd love to have a civil libertarian on there. Other than that, I really could care less. But as long as it's a civil libertarian, meaning, I don't want to say pro-gun, but but so long as there's due process, of course, but I don't want another Scalia. I want somebody who can walk the line in between and will make the best choice for both our individual liberties, but also to make the best choice on how laws are enforced, whichever ones get enforced, and will be consistent in their answers and will have original intent on their mind.
I agree. So, well, this is probably it for this debate.
So
it was great. In many cases, we went over probably 5 minutes, so we broke the rules more than.
But it was
once
well.
in this.
We followed our own.
It was well elaborated. Yeah, it was. Now I've been having a discussion with Ben on whether or not we're going to do a political joint. What's it called?
I got a little bit of time. I got about 15 minutes before it's probably I should be getting some rest, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. So we could probably do a political prediction live stream after this.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna. I may pull up on my tablet the 270 map, but I'm probably not gonna or just send it to you. But my basic prediction is this week. Like I said, I still think Clinton wins. I don't think that changed from 2 days ago or yesterday. I forget which one. It was yesterday because I was working 2 days ago.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Like I said, I don't think it changed. My prediction has changed in the day that's happened. I do think it's a bit weird that Orange Spray Tan has held a rally in Connecticut. Either he's doing a fundraising event there or he's seeing some internal numbers that look good for him. I doubt that, but again, we have seen some polls that show Connecticut way closer than it needs to be, in my opinion.
And I wanna just say, Georgia goes blue before Arizona goes blue, and Hillary's got a real actual pretty good margin in Arizona. So I don't.
Well, then again, I can. Even though I'm currently living in Virginia, I consider myself a Georgian because, well, that I got a little bit of connection to the area. I graduated high school there, spent a lot of time there, and it's a lovely state. Really, it's only 1 or 2 counties in the Atlanta area that actually go blue, as well as a few, as well as the college towns, Macon and as well as Macon and Savannah. Those are really the only blue areas of the state. And not even all the college towns go blue. For example, Bullock County, Statesboro, Georgia, where Georgia Southern, a university of about 10,000 students, primarily Georgians, go. It's a very red county. And even in 2008, when Obama won the election by 7-ish% against McCain, he still lost Georgia by 5%. 2012, he lost the state by 8%. Is it trending blue over the long run? Yes, I'm not going to deny it. But even then, they're trending blue more on the social issues. I mean, Atlanta is considered the LGBT capital of the South. But they're really only trending blue on the social issues, not so much the economic or even liberty ones. When I say liberty ones, I'm talking like, I don't even want to say free speech, because free speech has components that are conservative and liberal, but yeah, like I said, I think Georgia still goes red this year. 2024 is the soonest I could see it being a true toss-up or leaning blue. 2020 perhaps, depending on who the candidates are. This year, I think it'll be, again, a lean or a likely. I'm still calling it likely just based off past history. Oregon was the interesting one for you. I've been looking at it. I really don't think it goes red just because, again, past history. That's where I'm going to err on the side of is past history. even though Johnson has a very good chance of winning Utah, I'm still going past history. It's going red, in my opinion. Arizona, it depends
I
on
think it's
what
gonna
the
go
hell
blue.
happens.
All,
Arizona, it depends on what the hell happens.
all she has to do, is win Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, which won't be hard. Because
Yeah.
Obama lost the state by 10 points, and majority of those 10 points were probably in Maricopa County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not only that, but then again, Arizona really liked Sheriff Joe, and Sheriff Joe really likes Trump. If I were to say anything about the Northeast, I'm going to make a football joke, but if Tom Brady endorses Trump, Massachusetts goes in play. It's almost underestimated how much that area worships Tom Brady and the Patriots simply because of their recent run of success. Maine's second congressional district is also an interesting one. I'm not sure. They did recently just pass constitutional carry, or Vermont carry as it's sometimes called, because that's actually where constitutional carry started. Ironically, for one of the more Dem states in the Union, to have constitutional carry is it's interesting, but that's just a quirk in their state constitution.
Yeah, so this is what we're going to do. Maybe one of these Fridays when we both do our election prediction video, we'll do a joint video.
Mm-hmm.
So both of our channels can watch one video. And we're going to make sure that we let people know that. So we're going to have to end off this video here. But here's the thing, Ben. I don't X out of this tab as soon as the video stops, because we can still talk amongst ourselves on here. And I'm going to ask a couple questions. So,
and I'm probably going to make sure that I go. Let me add a new window, and that way I can end my stream.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and end off this stream here for now. But remember, don't X out the tab.
Yeah.
Because we can still talk amongst ourselves.
Where the is it?
Remember, for everybody that is watching this, below in the description, you can find a link where you can vote for whoever won this debate. And I also snuck in a little bit of our election 2016, so I can get a sufficient poll out of it. So it's nothing like personal information, but you can just click on whoever did the best policy debating in this. So if you want to do that, you can go click that link down there. It's a SurveyMonkey one, so if you want to go do that, that's perfectly fine. So thanks for joining us, and join us again.